Hello, and welcome to today's episode of Health University, where today I have the pleasure of introducing Lauren Herring to the conversation. Lauren is a registered nurse of more than 20 years, of which about 16 or so have been specific to the IVF community work and field. So she's held several positions during her clinic career at a world-renowned fertility clinic, including director of nursing, clinical manager of the Fertility Preservation Center, and practice manager. We've all had the conversation about how fertility clinics are all pretty much at capacity these days, and it can be a little challenging for the patient, for the individual trying to navigate her way through her IVF process. And so Lauren saw that need in 2019 and began to bridge that gap between clinical care and integrative fertility by opening her practice called Embrace Fertility, where she provides a personal connection to the fertility community by educating and empowering them to have a better IVF experience. And we know that IVF can be difficult at best or challenging at best. It's new, it's not what anyone expected to go through. And so it's good to have an ally in your corner. She also serves, in addition to her work as an IVF coach at Embrace Fertility, as clinical operations director at Ovum Health, an on-demand fertility telehealth platform. When she's not busy doing all of those things, she spends time reading and time with her husband, daughter, and 3 cats. So welcome, Lauren. Forgive me for tripping over my tongue a few times. And please, if there's anything that I neglected to include in your intro, please ad lib right here.
Oh, great. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Probably the only thing I would add is that though I've been in the fertility world for about 20 years, I actually got my start as an egg donor while I was in nursing school. So my history starts even a little further back than that with my exposure.
Yes.
So I've got a lot of perspectives.
Firsthand what it is as an egg donor and freezing eggs yourself. Yes, for sure. So when you say you empathize, you truly do.
Yes, yes. It's hard. If you haven't gone through it, it's hard to know what somebody physically and emotionally feels.
And so how would you describe, Lauren, the difference between health coaching and fertility coaching?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Of course, health coaching in general, our fertility is connected to our health. So the body will always prioritize survival over reproduction. So health coaching is absolutely necessary, and it is a small part of the fertility world, but health coaching truly does focus on all of the areas and potentially some other underlying conditions. Whereas when you talk about fertility, we're looking at how all of those areas specifically are affecting their fertility health and what areas can be improved so they can make positive, small changes that can make positive, lasting benefits.
And then more specifically to this conversation, it's not just fertility coaching, it's actual IVF coaching. So if you would describe the difference between fertility coaching and IVF coaching.
Yeah. So fertility coaching, there's a lot of people who bring a different perspective to that and a lot of different backgrounds. And so often it will focus more on mindset and lifestyle, emotional coping. What I bring as an IVF coach is more of the education and empowerment so that somebody really truly understands what is happening to them and their body every step along the way, ensuring that they know what questions to ask so they can be their own best advocate. All of those things, what actually is one of the hardest things I hear is, oh, I wish I would have known that. I wish I would have known to ask that.
Yes.
So my goal is really to help people have a better experience and not come out with regrets on the other side.
Yeah, perfect. And is this then a sort of a prerequisite to IVF, or is this a co-requisite or a concurrent to an IVF process, or either?
Really, what I do is concurrent. So I'm not there to go against their fertility clinic, but really to be more of their guru on the side, cheerleader, as they're going through their treatment, just even from the time of getting their official medication protocol, ensuring that they understand why did they get that protocol? What are those medications? What will they do? Tips and things about what to expect. And then as they are going through their fertility treatment, we talk each day of monitoring so that they definitely feel clear and confident as they're getting their monitoring results, that they understand what they mean. If there's any medication changes, that they understand that, and there's no 11th hour emergencies. And then, of course, suggesting questions to ask about how their cycle's going and things like that. So I'm really with them every step of the way, from basically before they get their calendar to the time of their actual retrieval or transfer.
And then do you find that there is a theme as to maybe how someone can better prepare for an IVF cycle, just even before coming to you, perhaps, or just general knowledge?
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think when we talk about preparing for IVF, whether somebody is going to use a coach, go on their own, or have their hopefully amazing support system with them, there are definitely things people can do to prepare in advance to hopefully minimize some of the stress that can come from it. One of the first things I would say is, when you're looking at your calendar, is to be flexible. IVF is not a straight line from A to B. Your body does not always cooperate when you think it's going to. So really understanding that you nor the clinic has full control over what happens with timing is something that can be very beneficial. So you're a little bit more easily able to roll with some of those changes that happen. Other ways to prepare, I think, is so important, just to get educated. So whether you're going through something with a coach or not, really making sure that you understand what your diagnosis is, why you're going through IVF, what your actual specific individual success rates are, and really understanding what that is so that you can manage your expectations along the way. That is by far one of the hardest things for people to do, is if they go in with inappropriate expectations and then all of a sudden they see how their monitoring goes and it's a smack in the face that they weren't expecting. So really preparing mind as well as body is equally important. So that, of course, then leads into preparing the body, though. And for IVF, just like any other method of conception, it's so important to have a good foundation.
Yeah.
We could talk about this for probably a whole show on its own, but really addressing those lifestyle areas to give yourself the best boost of a healthy foundation, minimizing stress, making sure you're getting movement and circulation, eating the right kind of foods, watching what you're putting in and on your body. All of those things affect your success with IVF as well. Anything that you can do to benefit and make small changes will only help as you're going through the process and hopefully have a better outcome.
Correct. Yeah, for sure. Fertile health is health. And it's not just health for the eggs or the embryos or the retrieval or transfer process. It's also about how healthy will that baby be? How comfortable will your postpartum be? And what are you setting your child up for in terms of his or her success as life continues to flourish for them? Yeah. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Do you have any suggestions as to what a viewer might want to consider when considering which fertility clinic might be best for him or her? Because sometimes it's male factor. Nonetheless, they're usually coming in as a couple, and there are nuances, I think, that are important to consider.
Absolutely. And it's such an individual choice for everyone. Unfortunately, oftentimes the lead into that is it's a financial decision. If somebody has insurance coverage, then they typically go that route first, whichever their option is. Beyond that, it's really important to look. I used to, 20 years ago, we didn't have chat features on social media and these huge communities, but now we do. So I think it's really important to look into the communities, get feedback from other patients who've gone there and hear their experience, understanding you can't compare yourself, but the experience of how the staff treats the patients when they hear back, if there's frustration about getting answers to questions on the financial side, any of those red flags, that's where you'll see them, is in these patient discussions. So that's, of course, one area. But then most importantly, from the scientific background side, would be looking at the clinic's overall success rates. And that's something anybody can access on the SART website. It's SART.org. And you can go on there and search by fertility clinic and see success rates. So any clinic in our country that, provides their year-round statistics. It then gets uploaded into this database, and it's just amazing to be able to see that. Of course, going a step further, initial consultation, making that they are very clear and upfront. Chances are, and I have to say, one of the biggest red flags is if you walk into a clinic and you are not ready to do IVF and they are pushing and pushing you to IVF, not the right place for you. People need to feel comfortable with all of that before they make their own decision if it's right for them.
Absolutely. And at first appointment, at first meeting, oftentimes the person is just trying to collect information, not trying to schedule her initial diagnostic appointment before leaving that day. So yes, I couldn't agree more. If you feel like you're back on your heels in the conversation, own your time and space, and you can get back to that clinic because, as you say, if that particular clinic is the one you will likely be going to due to restrictions around insurance coverage and so forth, do it at your under your own authority, if you will, your own agency, so that you're not feeling like you're chasing the rabbit, so to speak.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
then the other thing that is extremely important is in this day and age, we have access to medical professionals and experts in such a wide range now. And just having another second or third opinion, another brilliant mind who has different training, different experiences, looking at your case is never a bad thing. And then you can really get a bit more of a comparison of how one clinic operates versus another and some of their process that might affect you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And oftentimes, folks like yourself and myself, we actually have the benefit of more time because, as you say, the clinics are, maybe I said it, the clinics are at capacity. They may not have 25 minutes to talk with you if you're going in for a follow-up and you have questions, but your questions are deserving of answers. Find your team, your support team, and use perhaps a portal so that you're not bringing your questions at the time of your appointment, but your doc has had a chance to access them and review them and respond either prior to or during your appointment.
Absolutely. That's such great advice.
Yeah. Lauren, what would you say are some of the biggest fertility myths, or IVF myths rather, that you see out there in your dialogues with clients and patients?
Probably the first one would be that IVF automatically means twins. And while
Ah,
that may have been true, again, 10, 20 years ago, technology has improved so much and the guidelines have adjusted with the technology. So most patients really do end up with a single embryo transfer with a singleton pregnancy. That is the goal. So it's really still one of those very common myths that people think IVF automatically means multiple pregnancies, and we've
Isn't
got
that
much
interesting?
better.
Over here in the San Francisco Bay Area, I don't hear that so much anymore. I do hear it with IUI. Ironically, the patients get afraid that if they're going to have a Clomid or letrozole or something like that IUI, that they're going to have multiples, where the likelihood of that is pretty slim as well. Thankfully, nature takes care of it. It's not impossible, but it's not probable. So yeah,
Yes,
long gone are the days of transferring 6 embryos, hoping that 2 stick. We're not typically designed. We can have multiples, but it's not our health and our baby's health are better when we're gestating one at a time. Yeah.
exactly.
Any other
Yeah.
myths that you want to address?
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things is some people really think IVF is a guarantee. They
Let me get
wait
to that.
so long to do it
Mhm.
because they're hoping they don't need it. And then once they get there, they walk in just assuming it's going to work. And that's where really just understanding your diagnosis, what your success rates are from all of your diagnostic testing, so you can manage those expectations and really understand what your potential success rates are.
And how many retrievals you might have to have in order to yield enough embryos to have that take-home baby. I couldn't agree. That's what I see more often is patients will come into me after a disappointing IVF experience and saying, I thought it was going to be a slam dunk. I menstruate regularly and I just thought I'd go in there and it would be one and done and I'd get pregnant and then have some to bank as well. And when we look at the statistics, as you say, looking at SART, that is not always the case. So no, yeah, if your diagnosis is diminished ovarian reserve, you're likely to have to undergo multiple transfers, multiple retrievals just to bank enough embryos. So that's just one example. Thank you for listening to this episode of Health University. We always strive to find ways to improve our support of you. Please connect with us for a fertility assessment call at the link below, healthuniversity.co, note not .com, /your-fertile-health-call. We'd love to learn a bit about you and share our resources. Now, let's resume our conversation in today's episode.
Right. And that brings up another point when you talk about how do we prepare for IVF. It's also preparing and having a conversation with your partner to make sure that you're on the same page about what your limitations are. How many cycles are you willing to put yourself through to reach your goals? And of course, you can change those as you're going through the process, but having those conversations, those tough conversations before you start versus when you're in the thick of it makes such a big difference, and then of course it's your own decision, your own situation. You can change your mind at any time, but it's much easier to have some sort of thought process about it before the emotions go too far.
Right. The emotions and the effects of the hormones themselves. Yes, absolutely. Great point. Yeah, it's giving you that empowerment. It's giving you that agency. And so that you're going into this just feeling a little bit more like this isn't happening to you. This is happening with you.
Yes,
Yeah.
control, giving a little control back.
Absolutely. And the process is really one very little of control, but engagement, and then surrender so that you don't feel that you're being just tossed about with the protocols or the changes and so forth. What is your experience or your client's experience when there are changes to the protocol midstream? Do you find that because they're working with you, they coast with it, or if somebody has to go through a cycle where they're halting the progress so that some can catch up? I'm trying to use the just regular English language here. What do you find comes out of that experience? Because it's pretty common.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's very common for people to have to pivot or things just to catch them off guard during their cycle. And my clients, luckily, they do have me to bounce things off of pretty quickly. We have pretty solid communication techniques to get quick answers. And that's something that a lot of times they don't have with their clinic. If they were to get some news that's a little bit of a surprise, they can't necessarily get an answer always right as quickly as they want. And then they're sitting with that anxiety. So I find that my clients are much more calm about it, only because they know right away, even if they walk out of their clinic not understanding something or hang up the phone, they know that they can then have a conversation with me and talk through it. And I've worked with patients for more than one cycle, and it's been so clear to them that every cycle is unique and there are different challenges or different results that can happen at any time during their cycle that didn't happen in the previous one. So it's been nice for them to see that with those, they can pivot with their IVF coach, knowing that they'll be able to understand it and ask the right questions and have that confidence that they're going forward with better understanding.
And then as an IVF coach, do you find that patients also then need perhaps the support of referring out to a psychologist or something like that? I know sometimes they'll get some early on before they begin the cycle within the clinic, if the clinic can offer that, but more the relationship coaching, if you will, during the process. Is that something that you recommend or refer out to, or recommend that they have their couples coach or therapist in hand, in the back pocket, so to speak?
Absolutely. Back pocket, if not currently in their actual hand. I think it's so important, as you know, the stress that comes with infertility, much less IVF in general. It's so high that the stress it puts on a marriage, much less on an individual. These are all things that need to have some support that we're not trained. Nobody teaches us how to do these things in life. And so you do need to have special people who have the right training. And I very often reach into my bag and pull out some references for reproductive mental health counselors and therapists, because if they're not in that reproductive world, though, it's still not quite the same as just sending them to a family therapy type session.
Yeah.
There's like the nuances that it's really helpful if there is somebody who has that reproductive health background.
I couldn't agree more because here again, the whole experience is so novel, so unfamiliar that the more that one can rely on, oh, Lauren knows this better than I. She's been doing this, she's been in this world, or this therapist or coach knows this better than I. It just takes down the temperature a little bit to trust in some of the advice that one is being given.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Now, if you don't mind, I'd love for the listening audience to hear a little bit also about your position at Ovum. Would you like to share some of that?
Sure, I'd love
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yes, I'm so proud of what we're up to with Ovum.
Mm,
Ovum Health, it really sits in the space in between an OB and a fertility clinic. Ovum does not perform the high complex fertility treatment. What we do is look a little bit deeper, go deeper into the underlying conditions to see what's really getting in the way of somebody getting pregnant or staying pregnant, addressing those things so that hopefully we're removing those obstacles and they can then try to get pregnant from a healthier foundation standpoint. Potentially, if there's some low complexity treatment that maybe they need some oral medication while they're doing some timed intercourse and monitoring cycles, that's the goal. The goal is to hopefully help people who are trying to avoid IVF, who don't
mhm,
100% need IVF, give them another option.
mm,
What's great about Ovum is that they're in network with insurance companies. It's all telehealth. So meeting women where they are and where they
mhm,
want to be really is just, it's such an amazing thing that we've got fertility specialists on our team who come from fertility clinics who have 4 decades of experience in the IVF world, who very strongly believe in IVF, just like I do, but know
mhm,
that there are other ways and there are
mhm,
things that patients are looking for
mhm.
before they have to go down that route.
Absolutely. Yes. And I would purport that going through those exercises or testing or treatments, even if one does find that IVF is the right vehicle for them, you're better prepared. You've already done some of I'll call it functional medicine workup, made some of the adjustments that if you can see, for instance, if someone has tending toward anemia, low vitamin D, has maybe a luteal phase issue where it's just everything else is looking fine, but the progesterone is a little bit low. These are little pieces of support that can be given that can really just help you either avoid IVF and get pregnant and stay pregnant healthfully. And again, have a healthy pregnancy and a healthy baby and a healthy postpartum. It's that positive pregnancy test is delightful, and it's an incomplete assessment of what you're trying to grow, because you want to grow a healthy baby.
Absolutely. And I will say again, I think you said it perfectly. What Ovum does, it supports women so that whether or not they do end up going to IVF, they hopefully will need less medicine,
Mhm.
less attempts, and have, better outcomes with their treatment after they get healthy. So whatever route somebody is trying to go, that's the key is, right? Just getting your foundation healthy and optimizing from the inside out.
Yeah. And while they may not yet have a full understanding of the IVF process, they have a better understanding of their own reproductive health process. So you're stepping through that door already at an advantage and empowered. I will be putting show notes. In the show notes, I'll be putting links for Ovum Health and for Embrace Fertility and anything else that you might want to make sure that listeners have a chance to review and consider. Is there anything that I haven't asked about? What other things might you want to make sure that these listeners don't leave home without this little bit of knowledge?
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing I would want anyone listening to know is that no matter what route you go, you are paying for this with your emotions, time, blood, sweat, heart, soul. You deserve to get all of the information, to have all of your questions answered, to have 100% confidence in whatever route you go. And you should just never sit back and be along for the ride. You get to drive that train.
Thank you for saying that. I will often say, we work for you. In fact, we work for your ovaries and uterus. So we have a tendency in our culture to just get a little shy, if you will, with the white coat syndrome and presume that because we haven't got the credential, we haven't got knowledge. And that couldn't be further from the truth because nobody knows your body as well as you know your body. You've been living in it all your life. So you have equally as much to offer so that, again, you're not upping the stress by wondering what's going on. So yes, claim and demand your own agency around it. Utilize someone's support like Lauren's, because once again, we all know that the clinics themselves are taxed. And so they mean, if they had all the time in the world, I don't know a single doctor who would say, oh, I'd rather not talk to that person. I'd rather not convey information. They simply just don't have the time. So utilize these other resources like Ovum Health. And then there are ones at large, like Resolve is a wonderful one. If you need other stats, the ASRM, the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, has a public facing page that you can get some information on, even if it is simply what are the clinics in your area and what do they look like? What do their stats look like? Yeah. Yeah.
I think putting in the SART website would be really helpful too.
Absolutely.
People get lots of information.
I shall do that. Thank you. Thanks for that. I appreciate that. And then you mentioned the communities where people would find communities where someone else who has been through a particular clinic perhaps might have some information to convey, or be warned, they may just be blowing off steam. But where would they find these communities?
I think a lot of them really are on Facebook, certainly Instagram, but they have the groups where, for example, CNY or some of the bigger ones, they have Facebook pages and groups for just those patients to share information, opinions on the doctors and all of that. So it's really a treasure trove, actually. If you just know the right place to look on those social media pages, you can find it.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the ones that the clinics that do have their own pages for members, because they're being very transparent. They're allowing patients to spill the tea, whether good, bad, and everything in between. So for me, that just elevates my respect for them. So yeah, I want to be respectful of your time and the listeners' time. I try to keep this as concise as possible because people are busy. I'd love to have you back to talk a little bit more about a deeper dive in really what are the steps someone would go through with you so that they really know in advance what to look for and what they can expect.
I'd love to come back and talk anytime. I could talk about this all day.
Yep. Same. In fact, I have so far, and I will continue to. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate your time. And listeners, please feel free to check out the show notes, go through the links, connect with Lauren, check out Ovum, check out SART, and we will see you at the next episode of Health University, where at the end of every episode, we close with class dismissed.